Okay, in this video, we're going to be looking at how to display data, which is part 2. In the last video, we talked about how to display data using other types of graphs, like the pictograph, the dot plot, the stem and leaf plot, back-to-back stem and leaf plots, the frequency table, histograms, and bar graphs, and circle graphs. Now we're going to continue our discussion of displaying data with line graphs, scatter plots, and choosing a display. Let's start off with a line graph. A line graph typically shows trends in a variable over time, and time is usually marked on the horizontal axis, with a variable being considered marked on the vertical axis. Consecutive data points are connected by line segments. And this is what an illustration of a line graph looks like, as you can see here. This right here represents Santa's weight over 10 years. And her age is the horizontal axis, which is the time. The weight in pounds is the vertical axis. Okay, so here, this is the first example of a depiction of continuous data. Okay, and what continuous data is that data can be, it's just data values that can be measured. Okay. And also discrete data. All other data has examined thus far has been discrete data. Discrete means those are data values that can be counted. Like I can count how many students there are in a single class. That would be discrete data. Whereas continuous data is something that can be measurable, like the weight. A person's weight can be measured to a precise number. The distance that a person traveled can be measured by a precise number. Okay. So that's the difference between discrete data and continuous data. Okay, scatter plots is another way of displaying data. Sometimes a relationship between variables cannot be easily depicted by even a broken line. So a scatter plot may be used. And this is what a scatter plot looks like. Now in this case, the scatter plot shows the relationship between the number of hours studied and quiz scores. The highest score is a 10 and the lowest score is a 1. And the scatter plot usually is going to be data points that are scattered all over the place. Here you have your vertical axis, which is the number of hours studied, and then the quiz score is going to be the vertical axis. And we plot those points, and you'll see that those points are scattered, which is why it's called a scatter plot. Now a trend line has been added to the figure. That's this line right here. What a trend line is a line that closely fits the data and can be used to describe it. So here, this trend line is just that line that we sometimes call the line of best fit. Okay, so that line here best fits this set of data points here that you see here. Now a trend line can be used to make predictions. If the trend line slopes up from left to right, there is a positive association between the data on the horizontal axis and the data on the vertical axis. An increase in the value of the variable on the horizontal axis would predict an increase in the value of the variable on the vertical axis. Okay, so as you can see here, we have a positive association here, meaning as the value of x increases, the value of y increases as well. Another type of association is a negative association. If a trend line slopes down from left to right, there is a negative association between the data on the horizontal axis and the data on the vertical axis. An increase in the value of the variable on the horizontal axis would predict a decrease in the value of the variable on the vertical axis. So in this case here here you can see the data values are decreasing as the x value increases. So as the x value increases, the y value decreases. So that's why you have a negative association. And the third is no association. If the points do not fall if the points do not approximately fall about any line, then we say that there is no association. That means that these points are just scattered all over the place. And there is no association, which means no prediction of one variable can be made based on the value of the other. Also, you have double line graphs. Double line graphs may be used to demonstrate different sets of data where comparisons may be made. So let's look at a double line graph like this one. And also we have what they call a broken line graph in this case. The graph shows the crowdedness of housing from 1940 to 2000, with one line showing crowded with more than one person per room, and the other showing severely crowded with more than 1.5 persons per room. Okay. Now this may be hard to see, but in this case here, this will represent the crowded with more than one person per room, and severely crowded would be more than 1.5 persons per room. And we can use that broken line graph to compare those two. Okay. Now, how can we choose a display? Choosing the right display is not always easy, and there may be more than one appropriate choice. Now, for a bar graph, you use that bar graph to compare numbers of data in grouped categories. You want to order of the data does not matter except for convenience. So the one that we had where you had the number of the students' heights, the names of those students, that's considered, you can use a bar graph for that one because the order of those students will not matter, and the heights you just use as the vertical axis. Now with the histogram, you want to use that to compare numbers of data items grouped in numerical intervals, and the order does matter. Now, with the earlier presidents and the later presidents, where we had 40 to 49, 50 to 59, 60 to 69, and so on, we used a histogram. Okay, so we have to group those in numerical intervals. Then a stem and leaf plot is used to show each value in a data set and to group values into intervals. Okay. The scatter plot is used to show the relationship between two variables, like of course the quiz score and the quiz score, and of course those students' time that the students study and their quiz scores. That you can use the scatter plot. A line graph is used to show how data values can change over time, and that's normally used with continuous data. And then finally, the circle graph is used to show the division of the whole into parts. Okay, so those are the types of displays that we can use to illustrate data values. Okay, so that will conclude this particular video on displaying data, part 2.